everybody. Good afternoon, good late afternoon. The sun is shining over here. I feel like I'm in a spotlight. Usually I film with the sun over here. The sun is setting over there. Good afternoon, this is Jean here, Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I have been sewing. In fact, I actually finished a quilt that I was working on. But first of all, I want to thank you all for your love and your kindness for our Maxwell. He's had operation, as you know, the last almost 2 months has been pretty brutal. He's getting better, thank you. Slowly but surely regaining some strength. The last couple days, however, we had some computer glitches, some problems. Oh my word. And Maxwell is our go-to computer guy. And he was trying to get my computer set up. In fact, I'm doing this. He's temporarily put his computer into my sewing room here. It's just been a bit of a nightmare. The poor guy. We really rely on him. So he says hello. And Ian also. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my quilt, since this is Truelove Quilts for You. I finished my quilt, my Almond Country quilt pattern. I put a picture up here of how I was doing this foundation paper piece quilt pattern. I'm filming Maxwell.
Hello. I didn't realize you guys were there.
I'm filming. The sign says caution filming.
What sign? I didn't see that.
On the door. On the door.
Oh.
Say hello. Say hello. Come say hello, because
I did say hello. Here I am.
Okay. Are you fixing my computer?
Yeah, sometimes you gotta go 4 steps backwards to go 1 step forward.
Oh, Maxwell, please sort it out, darling.
Yeah, just Windows 11, trying to do that.
You had to update to Windows 11?
Well, your computer wasn't updating anyway.
It was
so
an older version, and we had to go out and buy a, what is that thing?
An external hard drive to take your information off and put it back on when I get it done.
Yeah, and that costs $180 for an external hard drive to back up
now
all
you need a Windows 11.
Now I need a Windows 11.
A Windows key. So
you have Windows 11.
That was just an ISO key, a free version of it.
Can I get a free version?
No.
Why? You got a free version?
No, I paid for mine.
You just said it's a free version.
There's what's known as an ISO key, what is free.
Well, then why can't I use that? Why can't I have a free version?
It don't work that way.
Oh.
Like
Well, you paid to have a Windows. Here, put your head down so we can see you. If the people want to see you. Now, Maxwell, stop dancing.
Okay.
So
okay,
you're
fine.
feeling better. You're feeling better, obviously. Yeah. You're feeling better.
Yeah.
People were concerned. You're feeling better, right?
Yeah, after 7 weeks.
After 7 weeks, yeah.
So
I can't get something free. I got to pay for something yet again.
The free is only until you get the paid one.
Well, then why can't I just get the free one until we?
That's the way I did it. You can't do that. We had to factory reset the entire computer. So. Well, like I said, 4 steps backwards to go forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
So
okay, say goodbye. I was talking about my quilt.
Yes, a lot of complications, but I'm getting there in the end.
Good, thank you so much, Maxwell.
Bye bye.
What would we do without you? What would you do without us?
No comment.
Goodbye. So yeah, talking about this quilt, it was a fairly difficult quilt to make. I was using the pattern, as you know. I should set up a playlist of all of the, just to look over my shoulder, no tutorials. And it was interesting because it was a difficult pattern, and I tweaked it at the very end. I didn't do their border, I did my own. You would have thought that with the, or maybe because of the angst and the worry of looking after Maxwell, who was not very well at all, I couldn't have come in my room, but I did, and it sort of just flowed out my fingers. Interesting. This fairly complicated quilt that I would just come in for a few minutes and do that, and come in and do that, and I'm done. It's done. and it turned out really lovely. And as I was making it, I thought, oh, and I think I did mention it, I think, oh, I'll put this in the quilt show in September. I've entered a quilt into the local quilt show for the last several years, and luckily or blessedly they've been accepted. So I thought, oh, this would be a pretty quilt to enter into the quilt show. And I had finished it. You'll see me videoing it. I had finished it, doing some little tweaks on it. And as I always do, I iron my quilts at the end. I spritz them with water because you've been maneuvering this cotton fabric tons, and sometimes it can get a bit wobbly, as it was. But I spritzed it with water, nice hot iron. Everything flattens out beautifully. And then, of course, when you have the batting, it puffs up again. It's lovely. This quilt has been quilted within an inch of its life, and so by the sheer, again, I say it in the videos that to come, by sheer act of just quilting, the fabric will shrink around the quilting stitches. So at some points I did have a little bit of flat points, spikes, but then around it was puffy. But then when I quilted the puffy parts, it all equaled out and shrunk. So I was quilting the very edges of my quilt near my prairie points. At the very, very end, I had hand stitched the backing to finish the quilt because the prairie points are the binding. It doesn't have any binding. So I show you how I hand stitched. Go me. I hand stitched the whole backing, and it was lovely. And then I actually quilted right up to the very edge to sort of mimic the inner border. Well, I was ironing the quilt, and it measures perfectly. Whatever it measures. I don't measure anything, but it measures perfectly. It's nice and square. But 3 of the borders, as I was spritzing and ironing it nice and flat, went lovely and flat. The one, it won't go flat. It's slightly in and out wavy. And I spritzed it and I ironed it, and I spritzed it and I ironed it. And you often hear somebody say, or they're sending a quote to a long armor, that maybe the quilts were cut on the bias, the borders were cut on the bias, or it's been stretched wavy. That's how it seems. But over the 500 quilts I've made, I've maybe had that happen 2 or 3 times. I don't know what happened. Now the border fabric is a Tula Pink. It's a good fabric. Was printed obviously on the lengthwise grain, and I cut my borders on the lengthwise grain, all the same size as the body of my quilt. The borders went on beautifully, but maybe as I was manipulating the prairie points on this one edge, on the one side, or the bottom, whatever it is, maybe I stretched it a little bit, and it got, maybe I stretched it and then sewed it stretched, as it were, because I can't get it to lay flat. Now for a quilt that Ian had it wrapped around him the other night, it was fine. It's lost its sacredness already, but I did really want to keep it lovely and put a hanging sleeve on and put it into the quilt show, but I wouldn't do that. And Ian was ever my fan. He said, oh, put a hanging sleeve on, let's hang it up, let it fall, and maybe we can just put a small little rod placket on the bottom and put a rod in it. Well, it would, by sheer force of a dowel or a rod, it would flatten it, but you can't put that into a quilt show. They hang the top from the hanging thing, and then if you see it waving, not too cool. So I was a little bit bummed about that because it was a really lovely quilt. Anyway, I'll put some pictures up of it. That's that. And we are going to be having some company. Ian's sister, his older sister Jane, and his cousin Sharon are coming to visit us in May for 2 weeks. Jane's, I think I've introduced you to Jane and Barry. Barry is not 100% health-wise, couldn't make the journey. They're coming from England, so it's just Jane and Sharon who are going to be here. So I will introduce them to you. In the middle of May, we're having a large family get-together, all of the Trueloves. I think at last count there's about 55 of us, just our family. So that'll be lovely. We're going to have that here. So we have that to look forward to. Yeah, so I do hope you enjoy this video. Again, thank you for all of your love and your kindness for Maxwell. He's on the mend, as you can see. He's more his jolly self, except this computer stuff. Anyway, Ian says hello. All the true love send their love. Thank you so much, folks. Bye-bye. I'm free motion quilting around each and every spike, around the arcs, and then making a decorative curve stitch in the background of the spikes. The block is actually a square, as you can see, the block. But what I've done is, because the quilt comprises of these 4 large sort of 3/4 wheels, as it were, this almond country quilt pattern. So we have plain the block here, and then 4 blocks in this wheel here. What it is, it makes the background, this white, the cream, I should say, background. I'm treating the cream background in the same way all the way around with my pebble quilting, if you can see that. It's like a really close textured pebble quilting. Now I'm using 60 weight thread in my Juki. I am using my Juki, my TL 2200 QVP mini Juki machine here. As you know, I have a new baby lock, a Jazz 2, which I absolutely love. I really do love that, and that's been my workhorse. I love it, but I did get my Juki out of sort of retirement for this project, because, to be honest, my baby lock, I have yet to be able to sort of dial in a nice free motion quilting stitch. And I just wanted to get this on with my free motion quilting, and my Juki is wonderful. As I said, I'm using a 60 weight thread, which is a much finer thread. I pieced everything with 50 weight thread, Aurifil on the top and the bobbin. I'm using a 60 weight thread in my machine because it's finer. I'm not quite sure if it's silk, but it's finer. And because I'm doing such an all over smaller quilting pattern, I think the finer, higher number thread sits a lot nicer and a little bit more delicate. Now, as you can see, or as you know, I don't like to quilt quilts within an inch of their life, within a 1/4 inch of their life, really. But I am quilting this very closely. I am quilting this quilt extremely closely, and again, as I've said before, the denser your quilting stitches are, which this is very, very, very close together, the stiffer your quilt's going to be. The further apart your quilting stitches are, which I usually quilt like 2.5, 3 to 4 inches apart, makes a lighter, fluffier quilt with a lot more air, which makes a warmer quilt. This quilt, though, I am stitching very close together, because ultimately it's going to be a quilted, more of a wall hanging. I'm going to be putting a sleeve on this, and the denser you quilt something, the stiffer your quilt will be, and the better it will hang, in my estimation. And I might be putting this quilt into a quilt show. I'm not quite sure. But as you can see, I have quilted this, each one of the spikes. I've quilted the arcs. I've quilted designs. Now, is my free motion quilting perfect? Absolutely not. I don't use rulers. I don't mark my quilt. I am literally just doing this by eye. So my circles get a little bit wonky. My top stitching, my stitch in the ditch isn't awesome, but I'm absolutely okay with that. I've tried working with rulers. I've tried marking things. Now, I must say, I have, and it was way years ago, and maybe I'll do a demonstration in another video. I do love to use my quilting stencils with a pounce pad, a chalk pounce pad, but I have and I have a ton of them somewhere to make beautiful feather motifs and all sorts. But I have found that on my cream or white fabric, the white chalk, it's very, very, very difficult to see it. I've had success marking stencils with an air or a water soluble marker. I know a lot of quilters do that. I don't love that, so I literally just do it free in my own brain as I go along. Now, I just wanted to show you this. I'm working, hopefully you can see it. I'm working on this. this whole wheel here, I started at in the middle with a sort of a floral. I've come here with the little circles. I've outlined each one of these and done a sort of an oval. I've done this arc here. Now, as you can see, I have done portions of my background in this circle pebble stitching. I have yet to do my borders. I have not done my borders yet at all. These are my prairie point borders. I'll be showing you how I do that at the very end. But as you can see, the denser you quilt a quilt, the more your fabric is going to shrink. Okay, as you can see, I have not quilted this area here. This area here up to here is quilted, and this background piece is quilted over to here. And this has been quilted heavily. So you have all of this sort of excess, and you're thinking, oh, are you going to get tucks and puffs in here? Well, you're not going to, because when I begin to stitch, I'll stitch these down, and then I'll stitch there, I'll stitch there, and then I'll do like I did here, like this echo, about every quarter of an inch. This fabric here will start to shrink. Now, if you like the look of a puffier quilt, then perhaps a puffier quilt and then a more densely quilted, you wouldn't stitch this every quarter of an inch across the top of the quilt. And there is something called trapunto, which if you wanted a real puffy quilt, you would put like a fiber fill or a batting underneath these and really make them stand out. Also, if you wanted a really, really puffy looking quilt to showcase your quilting stitches, I'm using a warm and natural, which is called warm and plush cotton batting, but you can also use a wool bat, which is very lightweight, but it really, when you quilt that, again with a finer thread, your quilting is really going to puff out really beautifully. But right now, I'm addressing this part here, which is a little bit puffy, and I'm just going to show you with some free motion quilting how that's going to sort of flatten down. So I'm going to start my machine. What I've done is I have a closed-toed metal free motion quilting foot on. I've not touched my tension. I have shortened my stitch length to 0. I've just threaded it the normal way into a 9014 jeans needle, and I have put a brand new needle on. Now with free motion quilting, and I've dropped my feed dogs. With free motion quilting, the needle's just going up and down. You're having to be the stitch regulator. This is where this is not an easy task. It's not a beginner method, but as you can see, I can go back and forth. I'm just going sort of in the ditch, or trying to keep close to these spiked units here. I can go back and forth. I can go sideways. And I'm the one who's guiding the fabric. The feed dogs are not. I always end with my needle down, and I pin basted this, and I'm just working with this area right in front of me. I have a table to the side of me here. I have a table to the back to support my quilt. I'm just going to come up on this one, this spike, and I'll just do the same thing. I'm just outlining these spikes. So again, here's the back of my quilt. I have 12 different fat quarters, all of the Tula Pink Roar, and as you can see, you can see the quilting really definition on the back, and as you can see, I've quilted almost about every quarter of an inch away. This is a heavily quilted, dense quilt, and it really does make the quilting stitches come alive on the back, as you can see. And I'll just finish this up here, right there, and yeah, then come back and really stitch it down, and then do a pretty curved stitch in my background. And as you can see, I have stitched the white background in my circles. I usually make them a little bit bigger, say the size of an American quarter and nickels, but these are sort of dimes and just little pebbles as to fill this white space. All I've done with this quilt is to go back and forth, and I'll show you in just a second how I free motion quilt. I'm just doing like a 1/4 inch back and forth, not like a figure 8 or anything. It's just you can see that texture on that wavy border. It's not really, when you look at it from a distance, it's not really taking away from the design of those sort of dinosaurs or whatever they are. It's just accenting the actual wave of the patterned border. So as you can see, I've done this corner. I have turned the backing over and I've stitched that down, and I have trimmed up the batting and the backing. As you can see, I've trimmed that up. I'm only working with about 12 inches at a time. I could do the whole lot and pin it and everything, but I've chosen not to. I'm just trimming it as I go along. Now, what I'm doing, hopefully you can see this, what I'm doing is I've trimmed the batting to about where the seam, where the stitching is, where I put my prairie points on that piece of fabric. Again, you can go back to the previous video to show you how I did the prairie points. And then I'm just turning the backing, sort of encasing that batting like so, because I want the batting right up to the edging of the prairie points on the back there. As you can see that. I'm just working with a few inches, and again, that backing is tucked right up onto that seam where I attached my prairie points. So there's the front of the quilt there, and there's the back of the quilt. I'm all finished quilting my quilt. I have stitched the back down. I have quilted it all. I've quilted it right up to the edge of my prairie points, the front and the back. And now what I'm doing is just a little added touch. As you know, what do I love? I love my rickrack, but this time I'm just using a tiny little, let me see if I can get it in there. Yeah, a tiny little baby rickrack right there. As you can see, it's a tiny little bit of orange rickrack. And as I was saying, I think in a previous video, the border, even though it's all of the same Tula pink fabric line, the border has a lot of orange and green. Now, every other one of my prairie points is also part of the fabric line, which is completely within the quilt body itself. Every single one of these points here are Tula pink fabrics. But for some reason, when I was making my quilt, I actually sort of pulled more unconsciously some solids from my stash, and I pulled quite a few like purpley bits of fabric. So my body of my quilt, to my eye, looks a little bit more purpley pink than it does the orange, even though they're all the same fabric line. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding a tiny little bit of orange rickrack.